To confirm, Chairman, the meeting is now live.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Good evening, everyone. I'm Graham Spellman, the Chair of the Schools Forum. Welcome to today's meeting. I'm assisted by Jess Bayliss as clerk and Stephen Chard, who will be the Zoom host for the meeting. Firstly, I'd like to use the opportunity to say thank you to a number of members who are leaving for whatever reason, some members and officers that are leaving in the coming months. Maria Morgan is standing down from the forum as she is retiring in September. Chloe Somerville from Hungerford Nursery School will be the new maintained nursery representative from September onwards. Campbell Smith is reaching the end of his term as a trustee at St Bart's in September, and therefore he's also standing down from the forum at that time. And also Jane Seymour, who's actually given apologies for this meeting, is retiring at the end of August after over 21 years of service. And I say thank you to all of you, Maria and Campbell, who are with us today. Thank you for your contributions to the forum. They've been very well received, and we thank you for taking part and helping with our decision making. I'd also like to thank, although she's not here, Jane Seymour, who all of you will know has given remarkable service to both the local authority and the schools forum with regard to the high needs and all of the difficulties that surround that area. Other members of the forum are as follows: Maria Morgan, Nicole Browning, Paul Davey, Keith Harvey, Joe MacArthur, Joe Lagares, Chris Prosser, Jackie Davies, Trevor Keeble, David Ramsden, Leslie Roberts, Campbell Smith, Phil Spray, Charlotte Wilson. Non-school members, Reverend Mark Bennett, Richard Hand, who will be with us later, and the following councillors and officers from West Berkshire Council. Councillor Heather Codlin, portfolio holder for Children and Family Services, and Marie Dodds, who's Executive Director, People, Children and Family Services. Rose Carberry, Principal Advisor for School Improvement. Susan Tanner, DBV Service Director. Nicola Ponton, Principal SEN Manager. Melanie Ellis, Service Director, Finance, Property and Procurement. Lisa Potts, Finance Manager, and Beth Kelly, who's joining us for the first time, Head of Early Years. Before I start, I would like to explain that tonight's meeting is being live streamed on YouTube, so members of the public are able to follow proceedings. I'll move on to item 1. So Jess, can you tell us the apologies that you've received for tonight's meeting, please?
Yeah, so apologies have been received from Gemma Piper, Michelle Harrison, Jane Seymour, Councillor Ian Cottingham, Neil Goddard, John Hewitt, Julie Lurie, Jay Armstrong, Richard Hawthorne, and as mentioned, Richard Hand is going to be arriving slightly late.
Thank you very much. Item number 2 are minutes of our last meeting. I'd like to ask the members of the forum if they're willing to accept the minutes of the previous meeting as an accurate record of that meeting. As chair, I propose to accept the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of June. Can I ask for a seconder for that motion, please? Thank you, Keith. And Jess, would you like to take a vote, please?
Yeah, so if I can put that to a vote through a show of hands, if you're happy to approve the minutes. Okay, I can confirm they're approved.
In that case, I will sign those minutes as a true record of that meeting. Right, item number 3 then, actions from our previous meeting. I think they've all been fulfilled. Is that the case, please, Jess?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And item number 4 then, declarations of interest. Can I ask for members who've got declaration of interest? Jackie. And Maria, you have a hand up as well.
Yes, one of the schools mentioned under item 7. So the advice is we need to leave for that discussion.
I believe so. Thank you. And Chris, you have a hand up as well.
Yeah, the same thing.
Yeah, indeed. Okay.
Mine's the same reason too.
Okay. Does anyone else? And Nicole, you have a.
And likewise, conflict of interest for item number 7.
Okay. Thank you very much. When we get there, then Stephen will take you out of the meeting. Thank you. Item number 5 then, Schools Forum membership and constitution from September 2024. Can I hand over to Jess, please, if you can lead this report?
Yeah. So the aim of this report is just to review and assess the membership and constitution, which the Schools Forum does on an annual basis. There haven't been any changes to the legislation requiring a change to the forum's current practice. Table 1 shows the number of pupils in each sector, which have remained broadly the same, and therefore no changes are proposed to the structure of the membership at this time. And no changes are proposed to the constitution. However, any suggestions or changes are welcome. So the proposal is to invite the forum to approve the membership and constitution from September 24. And once approved, the Schools Forum webpage will be updated accordingly.
Okay, thank you very much, Jess. You have a hand up, Maria. Do you have a question, or is that okay? Trevor, you have a question.
Yes, I just want to confirm a couple of things on it. The first one is on the terms of reference. So looking at page 21, I just want to clarify, just so that I totally understand it, that under the 1.2 annual consultation, those 11 bullet points, which go into page 22 as well, are actually things which the local authority can consult with us, but the local authority makes the decision on. And then, if that's correct, I'm then moving on to 1.3, which is where the school forum actually makes decisions. And I just want to be very clear, because the amount of expenditure, so first bullet point, the amount of expenditure the local authority can essentially retain from the school is actually a decision of the school forum. And the criteria for allocating funds for growth, all of these things, is that correct? Because that actually has a major implication on a later agenda item, doesn't it? About expenditure being brought back to the local authority, because it's actually a school forum decision. Am I correct in that, please?
Yeah.
Melanie, are you able to come in on that one?
We have, I think the item you're referring to is probably item 7, where the local authority is making the proposal and we're asking the Schools Forum to make the decision on it.
Absolutely. So it is a decision made by the forum. It's not we're not here for consultation. It's actually for us to make a decision.
Yeah, there'll be a vote on that item. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So we are clear on those two distinct differences, because I think that's really important for us as a school forum. I've also got another question which is about something different. I don't know if you want me to ask that as well.
Is it on this particular topic?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Please ask then. Yes.
So it's the decision on the non-school members, which is page 24. And it's got Roman Catholic Diocese, Church of England Diocese, Trade Union, Early Years, and non-school plus 16. I'm wondering how the decision was made for those 5. I know that both Roman Catholic Diocese and Church of England Diocese are mentioned in the Department of Education bill, so I understand the logic of that, but it also is saying we could use other things as well. And I'm just wondering, for instance, why we don't have someone from a mosque. When you look at the school forum, religious forum, we have people from all sorts of different cultural and religious organizations, and yet we're very clear it's just those 2. And I just wondered what the logic of that was, or who made that decision, and is that decision discussable, or is that I mean, I'm not wanting to have a big discussion about it. I'm just wanting to understand how that decision was made.
Yeah, I believe that was formed. So when the schools forum was first created, I guess that was something that was decided at that point in time. Yeah, and it's something that would be set out in the ESFA good practice guidelines on schools forums, and also the regulations would have sort of some suggestions and around who should be on the forum. But I'm happy to go back and check those just to double check, and I can email you separately, Trevor, about that.
I mean, I have looked at those, and it basically says it's up to the school forum to make a decision on who they should be. It does say, e.g., Roman Catholic and Church of England, so that's very clear.
Yeah.
But I mean, in West Berkshire, where we are, obviously there's a large Asian population, and it just seems. I'm just wondering why there is a decision not to invite someone from a mosque or the local mosque or whatever. Just it's a question.
I can have a look into it. Yeah, I'll look into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for raising that, Trevor. These things are set in stone from way back, so there's no reason why they can't be revisited. Mark, you have a point to make.
Yes, I'm one of the things that is true about our local schools is that several of them are sponsored by the Church of England, and several of them are Roman Catholic schools. We don't have any Muslim schools in the authority, although we would have pupils in that category, and it's whether we're working at the schools level or the community level. I guess I have nothing against wider representation, but I think that's probably the reason why those two and not others.
Yes, thank you, Mark. I think you're probably right there. Does anyone else have any points to make on this item? No? Okay. In that case, the recommendation, this is a decision for all forum members to approve the membership and constitution of the schools forum from September 2024 as proposed within the report. Can I have a proposer, please, for the motion? Thank you, Trevor. And Mark, thank you for seconding that. Can I hand over to Jess then? I think a show of hands probably in this instance.
Yeah, I'm going to hand over to Stephen for this one. So he's going to, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Graham, thank you, Jess. So yes, so as just been proposed and seconded, to approve the amendment and publish. Oh, sorry, reading the wrong thing. Do apologise. Approve the membership and constitution of the schools forum as proposed in the report. Could we do just a show of hands, please, in favour of that motion? Yeah, that looks to be everybody. Anyone against? No. Okay, I think I'll ask for abstentions as well. No. Okay, in that case, that proposal is carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you. Item number 6 then is the scheme for financing schools, and can I hand over to Melanie, please, for this topic?
Yes, thank you. So this has been out to consultation with all schools. The report details in section 5 the responses that I received. In 5.1, 5.1, there's section 5.14 was commented on, and so I've added a section to the scheme, making it a bit clear how schools can ask for a revenue contribution to their capital. In 7.2, this was a question about the removal of the section describing community facilities as part of the clawback mechanism. I was asked if what the community facilities are, and the answer to that is that they are in the consistent financial reporting codes. I've got a list of codes: E31, E32, I16 and I17, and as such they're excluded from the clawback calculation anyway. I was also asked if it was about income generation, but no, it's not referring to income generation in general, just about those specific CFR codes which undoubtedly any school business managers will know all about. So if anyone's got any further questions about that, please email me afterwards. But that's the updated explanation, which Jess can include in the minutes. Also, I was just asked some other general questions, which I just responded to, but didn't result in any changes to the actual scheme. So that's the list of updates. I've made those amendments to the scheme as were requested. So I think it really just needs, if there's anyone who needs to say anything, if not, then it just goes to a vote to adopt the new scheme. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Melanie. Does anyone have any questions for Melanie or comments? No? Okay. In that case, this is the decision again by all maintained school representatives to recommend to Schools Forum to approve the suggested amendment and to publish and adopt the updated scheme for financing schools by the 16th of July 2024. Can I have a proposal for the motion, please? One of the maintained schools representatives. Thank you, David. And a seconder, please. Thank you, Maria. And Jess, could you carry out the named vote then, please?
Yes, so vote with all maintained school reps, if you can indicate if you're for or against the proposal. So Nicole Browning.
For.
Jackie Davies.
For.
Paul Davey.
For.
Keith Harvey.
For.
Joe Lagaris.
For.
Joe MacArthur.
For.
Maria Morgan.
For.
Chris Prosser.
For.
David Ramsden.
For.
Leslie Roberts.
For.
And Phil Spray.
For.
I can confirm that's carried.
Thank you very much, Jess. I'll then move on to item number 7, which is clawback of surplus balances. And I think at this point, Stephen, we need to lose 4 of our members, unfortunately.
Indeed. So if I could ask those 4 to leave the meeting now, and what I'll do, I will email you as soon as this item's concluded so you can rejoin.
Thank you very much.
Graham, Mark Bennett has his hand raised.
Yes, I was just coming on to that. Mark, you have a point to make, please.
Well, yeah, some of the schools mentioned in this item are Church of England schools. I don't know whether that constitutes a conflict.
I don't think it's a matter per se that it constitutes a conflict. Additionally, you don't have a vote on this particular item.
I just wanted to be absolutely clear.
Yeah, and thank you for that. But I think your views, if you have such, will be very welcomed. Right. Can I then hand over to Melanie, please, if you can introduce this item?
Yes, I will do. Thank you, Graham. And just to point out that this item has been published and there has also been some Part 2 information circulated separately. So if anyone wants to discuss anything specific on the Part 2 information, please can you alert the chair so that he can make sure that that is discussed confidentially. Okay, thank you. So at the last Schools Forum, it was approved by Maintained Schools to introduce a clawback for surplus balances over 10% of schools funds as at the date of 31st of March 2024. That agreed mechanism was to provide information for the heads funding group to review and then for a recommendation of an amount to clawback to come back to this Schools Forum for approval. So that process has been followed and that's been done, and the proposals for each school are included in this paper in section 7. 2 schools will be reviewed at the next round of heads funding groups, and those are the iCollege due to the different nature of funding, And the castle, because Heads Funding Group wanted to see the split between the castle and the castle at Theale. So those two will come later. So in section 8, just to point out, there were 3 points requiring clarification that were raised by Heads Funding Group. First one, 8.1, was on Garland, and it was checking whether the HR and toilet blocks were fully committed and spent, and the answer is yes, they have been. So no further action on that. 8.2 regarding John Rankin was to check that the 65k hardware had been committed and spent. It actually hasn't been committed and spent. It's due to be by the end of year 2024, so further 9 months or so. So that does mean that it could be clawed back if the schools forum wanted to approve a different amount than what was recommended in the paper. And the third one is at 8.3 on Beedon, where there is a recommendation or a suggestion from some of HFG that we could propose taking the minimum balance of clawback, which would be 15k rather than 0, which is what formed the local authority proposal. So I think that's everything I wanted to go through as the overview. I don't know if Anne-Marie wanted to come in at any point, or if we just open it up to the floor for any questions.
I think at this stage, possibly if we open it up to the floor, unless you've got something you want to say, Anne-Marie, at this stage.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I was just going to say that the process that Melanie outlined, we followed the process entirely that was agreed at Schools Forum previously. Schools made submissions. There was a 3-4 hour meeting, I think, that went through all of the detail with the schools in question, and what Melanie presents today is the summary essentially of all of the submissions and a 4 hour meeting that included the schools talking about their balances. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Anne-Marie. Leslie, you had a question, please.
Yes, in light of how this clawback came about, it was because the LA wanted to appeal to the DfE, which would in turn have affected more schools. So our December decision was overturned because we wanted to protect more schools. So should we agree to these amounts this evening, can those schools that are affected at least have a chance to appeal? Because they had little time to respond to action. They had 15 minutes in person to come to that meeting. None of us put across that we felt competent because of the swarms of information. It was vast what we had to read in a really short time. And as there's a lot of the academic year left, their case could be considered, but for better transparency, it should be through an independent group of us that comes to us, not us reading wealth of information. So if I'm going to agree on the reps, because of how it's come about, I think they should have a chance to appeal.
Thank you very much, Leslie. Do you want to take that, Anne-Marie, please?
Thanks, Chair. I think in terms of appeal, we're doing something here that, first of all, was decided by Schools Forum. They outlined the process that they want to go through. They didn't identify in there what an appeals process would be. So again, that would be adding something to the process that's subsequent to original decisions. I think if Schools Forum didn't agree this afternoon, I think we would revert. We'd have 2 options available to us. We would either provide all of the information to the Secretary of State and ask them to make a decision, bearing in mind we would be presenting the work that the schools did and they were involved in, or we would go back to the Secretary of State and ask them to revert the decision in line with the original consultation, which potentially would take us to a 5% and an 8% position for the schools. So that the financial position for individual schools could potentially be more detrimental to individual schools than what's being proposed today. But that would be a matter for the Secretary of State.
But it's only asking for an appeal. for them to be able to appeal because they had such a short amount of time, because the turnaround even for us was, I think, an evening. So it's just, I know from looking at that information, responding to it, there are people who have noted and have come forward and said, look, there's errors in there, and they will present that. But I think for us to do the representation, there needs to be, you know, because the schools forum is supposed to hold water, hence the terms and reference, but it's already been blown out this year, and the group doesn't really contribute because it will be, an appeal has been made to the DfE, but the schools can't appeal the LA.
Chair, can I just come back to Leslie?
Yes, of course.
It was a schools forum decision to retake a vote, Leslie. It wasn't a local authority decision. The local authority had, and we didn't have to, the local authority had informed the schools forum what we intended to do. Schools forum decided that they would retake the vote based on the decision that the local authority were going to take. So there is nothing in there, and taking the decision to the Secretary of State through a disapplication request is the legitimate appeals process for the local authority, where in this occasion the decision was not in line with the consultation that had taken place with every school in West Berkshire.
But it doesn't
I'm frustrated that the suggestion is it's the local authority that have somehow undermined the school forum, when actually that's not the case.
It does feel like that though, Anne-Marie, because we made a decision, it was then said it was going to be appealed, and the only reason it got through is because more schools are going to be affected. Likewise, I said, could they please appeal, given the amount of time that they had? It's still going to, the answer is really no, because we'll appeal it again. And then the schools forum isn't really doing the work of what it's supposed to do. It's just going for the best situation of a bad situation.
Yeah, thank you, Leslie. I think if we take some more views on this, and then we can take a view on it later. Mark, you have a hand up.
Yeah, I wasn't part of the discussion at the last schools forum, so I'm not trying to unpick that, but there are a number of items in this report that are described as avoidable items not committed. Now, not committed items can cover a wide range of different things, from projects that are approaching completion to things that people have just thought of. And it wasn't clear to me where that that line was being drawn, or how it was being navigated in assessing what balances schools could legitimately hold.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Melanie, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I can do. So with regards to the commitments, all the detail was provided in the balance statements and other documentation that we had. Where there were any other questions, I went back to schools and asked for clarification on items. And what you can see from the tables is that even those items that we have deemed to be avoidable and not committed, I think the majority of schools have still been left with a proposed balance that would be sufficient to cover those anyway. And you can see that in all cases.
Thank you, Melanie. Keith, you've got
yeah, so it's two things. So firstly, sort of going back to Mark's question really about what's avoidable and unavoidable. I know in Heads Forum, Heads Funding Group, sorry, we looked at the financial statements from all the schools. We also had the governor's meeting minutes provided to us, but as Leslie's already said, there wasn't, I mean, I certainly didn't have sufficient time to read all the documentation in detail and to prepare myself fully for it. So we asked, as part of Heads Forum, that the local authority come back with a recommendation on that. But my question really for clarity is how the decision was made on what was avoidable and what was unavoidable, because I think that's a question of nuance rather than anything else, and whether that all those things that are put as avoidable. I mean, I'm going to give us the example. I think it's Springfield with the rebuilding of their fort. I think it is that is unnecessary. So their fort would be knocked down as part of a drainage works within the school, and the would need to be rebuilt. And to me, that seems to me a necessity, because it's a rebuilding of something that was already there. But there's quite a nuance within that. So that is just really a question around that.
Okay. Again,
Chair, do you mind if I just come in there?
Of
I think
course,
we had this conversation, Keith, the example that Keith's just used. The conversation was, if there is building works going on in the school, anything that exists that is impacted by the building works would be part of the building plan. So the playground, for example, would be made good and therefore return to its previous state. And what the school were talking about in the fort was keeping money separately to rebuild a fort that would have been part of the recognised building programme anyway. So it's an example. And then a previous point that a colleague made, we don't know what is committed and not committed. Any work that's underway, that purchase orders are already or have already been raised for, work that's already commenced, has been included, as Melanie points out, either in as additional sum of funds or holding on to the 10% plus any additional has enabled that work to be completed and to be funded. So where there's a spade in the ground, that funding is secured, for example, or where there is unavoidable spend, that work has been included. But some nice to haves, unfortunately, have not been included. Sorry, Chair, didn't mean to jump in. I think I jumped in front of you, David.
no, that's fine. David, you had a question or comment, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. What I will say before I start is I absolutely acknowledge Leslie's point that these things are difficult, and that individual schools will find decisions around clawback difficult. They always will. I think my point is more around the length of time that has gone into this. So while the most recent meeting might have been, relatively short from when the papers were produced, we've been dealing with these issues for literally months. The initial clawback discussion was done at Heads Funding Group some months ago, where lots of people were present. It was quite a tight vote even then. There was lots of robust professional discussion. We then had a further conversation about the merits of going directly to the DFE and our concerns over risk of that, both in terms of more schools being involved and also what I think would happen, a harder cut. We talked very articulately about not wanting to go to DBV from DBV to the next level up, where we would lose control. And there's been no discussion yet about the real issue here, that the high needs block is significantly in deficit. So I think, Chair, where I feel we are is that there has been robust, professional, sensitive consideration of all of these issues. Lots of the schools in question have had funding kept outside of the clawback because it's already committed. But as anybody on that panel will know, some of that feedback to us from individual schools was ultimately more articulate, more believable's the wrong word, Chair. I apologise, but more in the here and now, as opposed to what Anne-Marie is saying about the nice to have in the future. So we've applied several times, I think, a sensible professional rationale to this. I think tonight is just about making what always were going to be difficult decisions that affect individual schools, but in line with how that affects all of us. It's not about the LA versus schools. It's about the high needs block and what we're doing properly to address that, I think. I hope that's helped.
Yes, thank you, David. Leslie, you want to come back in there?
Yeah, I don't see it as LA versus schools. The only reason that's come up is because of how the LA are operating to get what ultimately is needed, but using us as a vehicle to get there. I feel that we have applied many things to this system, but I still feel in transparency and for people who are involved in this, they should have a chance to appeal. We don't work in a situation where it doesn't. Look why we're in this position now. They should be allowed to have an appeal.
Thank you, Leslie. Charlotte, you also got a point to make, please.
Yeah, thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of secondary heads as chair of the secondary heads group, and just really to minute that we as a group were concerned about the amount of documentation that colleagues had got to prepare in the timescales and the robustness and consistency of the process and the impact on individuals in preparing for that. But then just also that, and I wasn't at the last meeting where it was discussed, but then on the papers that there are 2 schools that won't have a decision made about them tonight. They're going back and bringing more information, and I'm just questioning sort of the parity and the fairness around that.
Do you want me to come in on that?
Yes, please, Anne-Marie.
Chair, thanks, Charlotte. It's because the mechanism for funding either alternative provision or special provision is that their funding is retrospective. So for much of the year, they have already done some of the work, or so not being very articulate, I'm making it less straightforward than it was. Some of their work is done ahead and some of their work is done retrospectively. So actually what we needed to do in those schools is go into it in a different way, because the numbers within the schools move within the term, and that's legitimate in terms of the funding formula and how that funding package is put together. So to look at it in the same way as schools funding was more complicated. So it is coming back. It's coming back subsequently. But for example, as Melanie, I think, already said, Castle combined the Castle School and the Castle at Thiel, and we wanted that split out to know where the surplus was, whether it was within 10% of each of the schools separately or whether it was independent of each other. And likewise, the funding formula for iCollege, because there were multiple streams at different times, it was impossible to see at any given point whether that was funding that had been paid and was surplus, or whether that was funding that had been paid in advance of work that was yet to be done.
So was that the case with Brookfields as well? Because they're a special school also. So I just question that funding.
It's the separation predominantly, Charlotte, around the Castle, was that the Castle at Thiel and the Castle weren't split. It was given as a single package as opposed to Brookfields, which was place funding and has been running for a number of years. The other issue with Castle at Thiel is the banding has yet to be fully determined because it's the first year in operation of the school. So the funding levels may or may not be correct in there.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Anne-Marie. David, you had a point, but you've taken your hand down. Okay, does anyone else have anything they would like to add? Keith?
I just want to say I came into the meeting today not sure whether I was going to abstain or vote for the motion. I'm just to say, I just want it noted really that I plan to vote for the motion, but only because it was really one of my questions was what would happen if this wasn't agreed today, and the fact that it will go back to the DFE if we vote against it. So I will vote for it, but it's reluctantly, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Keith. This is a very delicate and a very difficult decision for everyone to make, and there are lots of views, I'm sure, on all sides, and You're quite right. I'd like to encourage everyone to either vote for or against rather than abstaining, because an awful lot of work has gone into this on behalf of many people, and I think it's important that we show how we actually decide, so we decide decisively one way or the other. Thank you for mentioning that, though, Keith. I think we do need to bear in mind the downside of not voting in favour, which is unfortunate but reality. Has anyone else got any views that they want to put before we go to a vote? No? Okay. In that case, this is a decision that needs to be made by all maintained schools representatives, and it's to consider the clawback. What's the recommendation? It's to consider the proposed clawback amounts for each school as detailed within the report. Can I ask for a proposer for the motion, please, that we accept the report as it is? Can anyone propose? Thank you, David. And could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Paul. And Jess, can I ask you to take the vote then, please?
Yeah, so this is a vote with all maintained representatives. If you can indicate if you're for or against the recommendation. So Paul Davey.
For.
Keith Harvey.
For.
Joe Lagaris.
For.
Joe MacArthur.
For.
David Ramsden.
For.
Leslie Roberts.
Against because of the lack of appeal.
And Phil Spray.
For.
I confirm that's carried.
Thank you very much indeed, Jess. Stephen, could you please advise our colleagues that we finished that particular item? Thank you very much. I'll just wait to see if
I've just messaged them, so they should be rejoining us in a moment.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll just wait one moment. They may not all decide to come back in, of course. No, no one's reappeared.
Not as yet, Chair, no.
Have you had any response at all?
I haven't, no. I don't know if you want to proceed, and I'll try re-messaging or something.
If you wouldn't mind doing that, please.
Of course.
Okay, I think we do need to move on then. Item number 8 then is an update on the DfE's Delivering Better Value programme. Susan Tanner, I couldn't see you on. Oh yes, Susan, you are there. Can you introduce this item, please?
Sorry, just let me get myself organised. I'm on too many screens, I'm afraid, Chair. You can see me and hear me.
You can.
Yeah. Okay. Lovely. So, as was noted in the actions from the previous meeting, this paper before Schools Forum this evening is a replica of the Delivering Better Value update, which we as a council made to the DfE as part of our regular submissions. I'll go through it, just pulling out the key points in the order presented in the paper, Chair.
Thank you.
So on the first section, which is progress against implementation plans, we've reported that key posts in the programme team have been recruited to, which has allowed us to pump prime the work that we're doing and increase the capacity in the first sort of very busy stages of the programme. The Delivering Better Value programme and the Send and Inclusion strategy are now fully aligned under the umbrella of Innovation in Send, I think we talked to Schools Forum about that a couple of meetings ago. That gives us a single strategic approach and a coherent delivery plan to work from. It also enables our transformation programme work to continue a sustainable business as usual once the DBV programme ends. The DBV working groups are meeting regularly, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the work that they're doing later on in this update. And we continue to support the Primary Care Forum to develop and increase its membership. And as set out in the paper, have engaged the Quorum programme to support with this. I think what I'll say at this point, Chair, is that the DFE accepted our update with no questions, queries or comments, which is fairly unusual. So we were pleased with that. So in terms of grant expenditure, our spend to date at £114,000 is lower than we'd anticipated. That's primarily due to a delay in some recruitment and a delayed start to the whole school mental health project. We are struggling to recruit to educational psychologist posts generally. So in order to deliver that project, we're looking at how we might do it differently. However, we have had initial discussions with the DFE about rolling over the funding so that we can run the whole school mental health project from September to September next year. Initial indications are that they're viewing that favourably. So there are two work streams in the DBV programme, the first of which is about clear communications. And there are a number of key priorities sitting in that work stream. The first of which is a multi-agency gap analysis of universal and targeted service offer for SEND. That's a really important piece of work because it will enable us to set out clearly for everybody, for schools, for families, children and young people, what the offer is below statutory thresholds. That work is well underway, and we're hoping to have an initial statement of offer available by the end of this month. The second area of work is the development of a data dashboard. So we need really all of us to understand our data better and use it in an informed way to make decisions and develop our strategies. And that work is also well underway. And by the time of our next DBV report, we should have a functioning data dashboard available. The third area of work under clear communications is improving co-production. And we're working with Genuine Partnerships and Quorum, as I set out earlier, to support our Parent Carer Forum on that. We've developed our communication plan, and we've got a send blog, which is just about to go live. In terms of the second work stream, meeting diverse needs locally, there's a number of strands to that work also. So the first is the sufficiency. So we have a first draft send sufficiency plan, which we're just looking at internally, but the final version I hope will be available by the end of July. That will help us in discussions with schools and other settings about what we need to develop, for future years. We're discussing with colleagues in Reading the use of the independent non-maintained special school and alternative provision commissioning framework to develop capacity. And our work on developing local capacity is now well underway. So there's an options paper which will be due in August, September of this year. The second strand is financial sustainability. So we are in the process of doing a review of all statutory decision-making panels, and work has started on phase one of the banding review. Phase one will be complete in August, and then we will go into consultation and discussion with schools from the start of the new academic year. The third strand is the supporting inclusive practice. So 3 pieces of work there. The first is the transition support program. So the transition support program is split into 2 parts. The first one is from early year settings into primary school. That work has been ongoing since May 2024 using funded additional resource in the EDIT team. And that is progressing well. And for transitions between Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 3, that programme is in co-production and will be piloted in the autumn. So we will start piloting it with Year 6 pupils, September's Year 6 pupils, who will be transferring the following year into secondary school. And we've got an evaluation of support services, which, as we've discussed at Schools Forum before, is underway, as is an audit of schools' training needs, based on what schools have told us they want for training. And then the third piece of work under supporting inclusive practice is the whole school mental health project, which I mentioned earlier. And then the final thing that I wanted to draw out of the report that Hester's written for you there is the deficit management plan. And just to note that the mitigated deficit as at 27-28 is estimated to have increased by 4.5 million to 65.9. And that is the mitigated deficit position, Chair. All right. So that was my notes. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. That's very helpful. And there's obviously a lot of work going on there. Does anyone have any questions? Trevor, you have something to ask.
Yeah, I got a couple of questions. The first one is, when you very initially started, you said you were getting people in post. I noticed in 3.21, that there's still 2 major posts not appointed yet. Had they been appointed since this report, or where are we at with those? Because obviously key people.
No, we are. They haven't as yet been appointed. The sorry, forgive me. I'm looking at the wrong paper. One has been appointed, and that the commissioning post has been appointed, and the coordinator post is. We've just shortlisted, so there will be interviews later this week, early next week.
So the service director delivering better value.
Oh, that's me.
That's you, right?
Yes. Yes.
So you have been appointed.
Yes, I have been appointed. Yes. Sorry,
Right,
there's a delay in our reporting. So I was appointed in May.
Right. Okay, but this report is dated July. So it's a bit odd. Okay, the second thing I just want to pick up is, because obviously there's quite a lot going on with the education psychologists at the moment, as we're all aware of in the schools. My understanding is there is an issue around whether or not they're buying into this process. And I just wondered, is that an issue for you, or is that an issue we just don't need to worry about?
Sorry, can I just check my understanding of the question? Are you asking if the reason we're not getting educational psychology, we're not able to start the whole school mental health project is because we haven't got psychologists who are interested in doing the project?
Or psychologists who are on board with it? Because a lot of them have left the service, haven't they? Left your service.
Well, they've left educational psychology. The recruitment of educational psychologists is really, really tricky. They're in very short supply, and recruitment and retention is an issue for every local authority. But to reassure you that the proposal for the whole school mental health project has actually come from the educational psychologists themselves. So they are the authors of the project initiation document.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Trevor. Does anyone else have any questions or points to raise? No? Okay, in that case, just for knowledge of those of our colleagues who were omitted from item number 7, the motion was carried. There was a long discussion, and a difficult decision was made in favour of the motion, just so that you are all aware of that. Move on to item number 9. This is deficit schools. And can I hand over to Melanie, please? Can you lead on this topic? Sorry. Before you start, Melanie, Susan, is it a question, a point that you want to raise in support of what you've just been saying?
Yes, can I just go back to Trevor's point about sorry, I was slightly thrown when Trevor suggested that there was a question about whether I'd been appointed in the report that went to the DFE for July. I've just checked the actual words. And just to be really clear for the state of the notes, is not saying wasn't appointed. It was that I was a delayed appointment. So I didn't start on the 1st of April. I started in May, hence the underspend, or part of the underspend. I'm not responsible for all of the underspend.
Thank you.
I just wanted to be clear on that.
Yeah, that's very kind. Thank you. Melanie, can you please take on item number 9?
Yes, so this report's for information, and it's an update on the outturn position for our deficit schools. 9 schools had a licence deficit for the year 23-24. There's a summary in table 5.1. The combined position at year end was 74k worse than the original budget. However, 1 school ended with a surplus rather than a deficit, and 3 schools ended with lower deficits than they budgeted, but that meant that 5 schools ended the year with higher deficits than planned. So all the details for individual schools are there, which I'll leave you to read or assume that you have. In section 6, it details that there were 4 additional schools ending with an unlicensed deficit. And those schools, it details what the action required is. Some of them, it was a one-off deficit, not going to reoccur and going to be recovered immediately, so there's no action required. But in 2 of them, we have asked for a licence application for the year 24-25. So the next report will come in the next term, September, October time. That will detail all the schools that we are licensing for 24-25. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Does anyone have any points to raise on this particular item? No, there's no. Oh, yes, Mark, would you like to have a question there?
Have we learned anything from looking at those deficits and the kind of action plans that are open to schools about the challenges facing schools and the things that we might have to do this year and help schools with this year? What's the learning from that review, the review of those deficits?
Okay, I think that's a really good point. It'd probably be a good idea if perhaps if I do that in an actual paper for next time, because then I can set it out, much more clearly. I mean, the learning that we have is that it doesn't seem to be necessarily that it's size or location or number of pupils, but I think dropping pupils is a significant factor in all of this. But I think it'd be probably more helpful if I set it out in a paper for you.
Thank you, Melanie. Yes, that would be very helpful, I'm sure, for everyone. Does anyone else have any questions? No? Okay, thank you. In that case, I'll move on to item 10. It's the DSG monitoring report for 2024/25 up to month 3. Lisa, can you just enlighten us on the report that you produced? Is Lisa there? She's still there.
Sorry, she may have literally just disappeared. I think she was running out of time. So I might have to
can you do that then, please, Melanie?
Yeah, let me just go back to the page. Yeah. So again, it's for information. This is the first quarter that's been budget monitored. Forecast position is shown in table 1 here, which is in-year deficit of £7 million, which of course it gets added to the cumulative deficit brought forward of 9.5, which brings us to a cumulative forecast deficit by the end of this year of £16.5 million. There's some detail there in the report, but some of this was covered in the high needs update on the DBV as well. But just in 5.11, there's another table there which shows which blocks have got which deficit, and obviously, as we all know, it's the high needs block with the majority of this deficit. That's it.
Right. Thank you, Melanie. Does anyone have any questions or points to raise on that? I know a number of you are eager to get away because you have other meetings going on this evening as well. If there's nothing else, then we'll move on to item 11, which is our forward plan. And if I can ask everyone to note the forward plan and the contracts forward plan. Does anyone have any questions they want to raise at that point? No? Okay. That's good. So item number 12 is the date of our next meeting, which will be on Monday, the 14th of October. Seems like a million miles away, but I'm sure it will come around very quickly. That's at 5 p.m. I think it was almost decided, or that the preference at our last meeting was that we return to Shaw House in person. So unless there's any strong advice or decision against doing that, then that's what we will do for our next meeting on Monday, the 14th of October. Does anyone have any strong views on that? Joe, you have something to add on that?
Yeah, hi. Should something happen in school and it mean that I can't get to the forum in person but could attend online, and I'm not suggesting I would use it as a get out clause, I'm talking about exceptional circumstances, would there still be a virtual link to attend, or would it be a case of sending apologies if we couldn't be there physically?
Can I ask Jess to answer that one? I think that. Yes, can you answer that particular question?
Sorry, I keep losing connection. I think it was about the next meeting being
Yes.
all in person. Yeah. So the way we've done it at Shaw House is that it is all in person. I think if we wanted a hybrid, it would have to be held at the council offices. So yeah, I mean, if we're going with Shaw House, then it would be an all in person.
I think there are difficulties in having a hybrid meeting, if I understand things correctly. Hybrid meetings are very difficult to organise and fraught with technical difficulties, I'm sure. Okay. I noticed Richard has joined us and he's got a hand up. Are you there, Richard?
Yeah, thank you, Graham. Can you hear me?
We have finished the meeting, or pretty much, but if you have something to say, please.
Yeah, thank you. I was at another meeting, so I came as quickly as I could. I did want to say something for item 7. I did send something through, which I think has got to you, but it's very brief. But I wouldn't mind being able to read out this this statement on behalf of some of our members about clawback, if that would be okay. I know it's after the Lord Mayor's show, and it won't take long.
If you'd like to keep it brief, I think some of the points on that you'd made have already been discussed at the meeting.
Right.
So you make it very quick. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. I'll be brief. Whilst unions recognise the collective value of the clawback mechanism and that the LA has to make efforts to deal with the SEND deficit, members across the teaching unions have raised concerns about the process and implications. To be clear, we believe that the ultimate responsibility lies with central government as a result of years of underfunding, which has put both the LA and heads in an invidious position. Perhaps some difficult decisions about clawback surpluses should also have been addressed historically in a more timely manner. However, the following points. Number one, there's a concern about the timescale of the process and that it has been rushed. Number two, the parameters about avoidable items not committed, which are therefore included in clawback calculations. Number three, why have self-generated funds not been protected and excluded from clawback? Number four, will there be an appeal process for schools? I noticed a comment there early on, I just caught that, and it sounds like there won't be. Would there be an appeal process for schools to contest the amount of clawback? And number five, DVV seems to be driving the process without schools effective feeling that they have any agency. Heads and schools are therefore feeling unsupported, and there's a fear that the LA will, quote unquote, lose the dressing room. The LA has supported schools over the years very well in difficult circumstances. There is a sense that this is being lost as a result of a spreadsheet approach. That's an abbreviated version of what I've sent in. Yeah. Apologies, I couldn't put that as part of the debate, but I just did want to get that on record for the forum anyway.
Yes, thank
Thanks
you very
very
much, Richard. Yeah, that's very helpful, and I would suggest that pretty well all of those points were raised in the discussion. It was a very difficult discussion to have, and obviously a difficult decision to come to. But all of those points, I think, were raised by one member or another. But thank you for that.
Right, thank you, Graham.
It just leaves me then to close the meeting, and if I can wish everyone a very pleasant and enjoyable summer break, and I just hope the sun actually comes out for you, and you can get some sunshine and relaxation over the summer break. So thank you all very much indeed for your participation and for your comments, and for your helpful participation in the meeting today. Thank you all very much indeed.
Thanks, Graham.
Thank you all.
Thank you.